So I want to talk about microtransactions. So microtransactions need to be avoided at all costs. Now, when young children pay for microtransactions, that gets their brains wired to accept paying for microtransactions in the future. This could lead to major problems down the line. So, for example, here's a 19-year-old who spent $10,000 on microtransactions. Things will keep on escalating. 5 cents a day could mean $5 tomorrow and eventually lead to significantly more. And microtransactions are targeted specifically towards children for the purpose of getting them addicted when older. So here's the thing. If someone just spends $20 on microtransactions, that's not really the problem. The thing is, the companies don't want to stop there. They want them to keep on escalating, to spend more and more money. When someone pays for, let's say, a digital item in a video game, may that be a weapon or skin, that gets their brain to wire to accept, oh, look, paying for this is absolutely normal. And that gets them to want to pay for this stuff in the future. So this should be prevented at all costs. So let's talk about how to combat these. And there are several methods. And keep in mind, yes, if someone just spends $20, that's not a problem. The problem is when they get to thousands and thousands of dollars. And again, microtransactions are meant to be prioritized. They're meant to get a relatively small amount of people to spend tons and tons of money. It's not, the monetization isn't necessarily to get everyone to spend, let's say, $10 or $20. It's more about getting, maybe 5% or, 2% of the player base to spend, above $1,000 each. And that's kind of like the goal here. And you want to make sure that you're not the one that's spending all that money. Okay, so let's talk about how to combat microtransactions. So there are several methods. One is simple, a strict prohibition of games that have microtransactions. Now, this may be difficult. This also means parents need to understand what games they're playing. Personally, every game I have has no microtransactions in them. That's my personal level, but again, it's definitely doable to kind of figure out what games they're playing, but to an outright prohibition of every single game with microtransactions, I find that's difficult. Especially if their friends really want them to get into a game that has them. And although with some, you can probably prevent most of the games with them, but prevent all of them outright would be kind of difficult. The second is allow games with microtransactions, but refuse to pay for microtransactions. So this is good at building up an unwillingness to pay for microtransactions in the future, but as kids get older and start making money, they still have the power to pay for microtransactions. So keep that in mind. So yes, you can say, I'm not going to pay for any of it, but as they get older and if they have jobs, they might still get into that. And that could lead to the whole 19-year-old spend $10,000 microtransactions, right? They get their job, and then they may be spending 50% of their income on microtransactions. Okay, next is trainers, cheat engines, and save file editors. Now this applies to single-player games only, and it's much easier to do on PC. So games used to carry cheat codes, but publishers realized that they can monetize them into microtransactions. But we can still download trainers and save file editors to bypass that and just kind of almost like bring your cheat codes back, especially if a section of the game is really hard and they're like, oh, why don't you pay us money to get through this? But a simple save file editor can let you bypass that without any problems. And I find trainers and cheat engines might not necessarily occur for every game, but save file editors are fairly universal. And on PC, I find it's usually you can find a save file editor to just kind of edit a save file, which is give yourself a really powerful weapon or something, especially if you're really stuck in a game and the game is asking you to pay for stuff. So this does give you a way of bypassing sort of combating microtransactions, and this is a hard counter to single player microtransactions on PC. On consoles, it's a lot harder to do because consoles you can't just edit a save file the same way a PC can, or download a trainer. Lastly, we have piracy. Now, piracy is an unlawful activity and is not recommended, but when a child is used to getting games for free, paying for microtransactions seem quite pointless to them. Surprisingly, piracy is actually the most effective method of combating microtransactions. But since it's unlawful, I cannot recommend it on a personal level. However, let's look at the other thing, which is outright prohibition of microtransactions. Simply allow games with them, but refuse to pay for them, and trainers, cheat engines, save file editors. So the other three does serve as a holistic approach to being microtransactions. A simple no means no approach does work when using to pay for microtransactions for children, while trainers serve as a hard counter to microtransactions in single-player games as well. That leaves online games as the main source of microtransactions. So right there, by using trainers, you can say, okay, any single-player game, you can potentially download either a trainer, a cheat engine, or a save file editor for them. But from online games, obviously you can't. So that will be your main source of microtransactions. Now, personally, I don't play any online games, and if I do, they lack microtransactions. So you can encourage kids to avoid microtransaction online games, show them a variety of games, and don't pay for anything. And that's the thing. Everyone's a little different. I have a friend of mine, he likes single-player games. He doesn't play online games, so again, he never gets into the whole microtransaction mess, simply because of that. But again, to outright prohibit online games is kind of hard, because especially if the friends are kind of dragging them into them. So this could be a potential problem in the future, and you kind of have to go to the holistic approach, right? You have trainers, cheat engines, save file editors. That's pretty much your first line of defense. For any single player game, you can download save file editors to bypass microtransactions entirely, and otherwise it's a combination of prohibit games and microtransactions, or at least do your best to. Again, you cannot prohibit all of them outright. That's just not possible. But you can prohibit or discourage them, and again, something is just not paying for them. And here's the thing: these two does work combined, because if you're like, oh, I'm not going to pay for microtransactions for you, that actually discourages them to play, online games, just like microtransaction based games, right? Because if you're not going to pay for microtransactions, then we're like, oh, my dad's not going to pay, or my dad or mom is not going to pay for these for me, so why am I playing these? I can't get past this anyways. So this second one actually applies to the first one. And here's the thing, and the problem when you pay for microtransactions, you're rewarding that behavior, right? You're telling them, hey, look, I can play microtransaction-filled games, but my mom and dad are going to pay for them. That encourages them to play these games more, which gives you more microtransactions. By simply not paying for them, that might simply discourage them to play these games in the first place. And that's really, really effective. But again, don't forget to save file editors and trainers. And again, on PC, lot less problems because it's easier to get these. Okay. Now, piracy is unlawful and not legal, and I do not recommend or endorse anybody conduct piracy in any way. Again, I do not recommend anyone do piracy.